She's under arrest.
I have to go with you. I have to go. I have to go. You don't have that choice. Let me help you out. No, I have to stay. Please don't do this.
Take the bags.
Yeah, you need to wait outside. Okay.
My husband's almost 80 years old. He can't come with me?
Please, can I help? No, you can't do that. Oh, don't do this, please.
Please.
Oh,
Someone's got to help him get home. It's terrible. You can't do this. This is insane.
Is that okay with you?
Please, give me that with handcuffs on. She's not going anywhere. Please. Please.
Do you have anything in your pocket?
No, no.
Do you have anything of value in you?
No, I
Does she have a necklace on? You
Wanna go?
can take it off.
Yeah, take it off. Yeah.
And the earrings.
And the earrings, the rings, take everything. You give it to your husband. Because once you arrive at County Jail, they're gonna make you remove all that.
can I call my attorney?
You can.
You have a passport already?
Where am I going?
Just open your finger.
Where am I going?
You're going to the Dade County Jail.
They come here. No, this is right here. The one on
I'm sorry, remove her earrings. Yeah. I'll call.
Get in an Uber, go home.
I will.
Take
I
it
will.
easy.
I will.
All right?
Yes.
Here, how?
If there's anything else in her person that she wants to.
Oh, it's coming, sweetheart. I got it's coming. Just a second.
Do you have her driver's license by any chance?
I'm sorry?
Her driver's
It's in my
Yeah.
it's in my purse.
Yeah.
How it is?
Yeah, then you could give it.
Sure.
It's
Do you need her
almost there.
passport? Or can I give it to your husband? The passport can I give it?
What's up?
Where is it?
It's in the blue and white. It's in the blue and white.
Yeah, but I'm gonna get her driver's license for it. Yeah.
And the license, the address on your license is correct?
Yes.
She needs all her.
When she goes to the jail, they work something out with the hospital.
They're all in here, though.
Yes, they work. If I take them here, what will happen is when you go there, they toss them out. So when you go to there, you will meet the nurse and the doctor, and then they'll work in conjunction with the hospital to get you whatever you need.
Yeah, but I don't have a list. I know what I have
Is it multiple or is just one or two?
there's a bag of medication in here. Is that what you're asking me?
She can take medication.
No, I know. I was just trying to find out if it was like one or two. Yeah, if it was one or two, then she maybe could take the name down.
Do you need anything else from her?
Can I ask
Or
you
we're good to
something?
go?
Can someone just get my husband outside and
So I'll get her.
There's a gentleman here with a system in the anyway.
I'll be okay.
I have the ring. Hold on.
Let me have her ring, please. Yeah, no, I'll okay.
That's crazy.
I love you.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Thanks again. Appreciate you guys. location, no unit that can make it to Lord or County Curb Further than the
What if I told you that a grandmother who'd never gotten a parking ticket would end up spending the rest of her life behind bars for orchestrating one of the most calculated plots in recent criminal history? What if I told you that her downfall wasn't just about evidence or witnesses, but about something far more chilling? Her absolute refusal to believe the rules applied to her. This is the story of Donna Adelson, a woman who saw herself not as a criminal, but as a protector, a matriarch, a decision maker. And when the world she controlled began to crumble, she didn't retreat. She didn't confess. She stood firm, defiant until the very end, even as the walls closed in around her. Before we dive into this twisted tale of family loyalty, calculated planning, and the moment everything fell apart, if you're fascinated by cases like this, stories that make you question human nature and the lengths people will go to protect what they love, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for Dark Trail Files, because we bring you the most compelling true crime stories, told with the depth and detail they deserve. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Now let's get into it. July 18th, 2014. Tallahassee, Florida. A quiet afternoon in the Benton Hills neighborhood, where Spanish moss hangs from oak trees and families live the kind of comfortable, academic life that comes with a university town. Dan Markel, a respected law professor at Florida State University, pulled into his garage after running errands. He was a devoted father to his two young sons, a brilliant legal mind who'd graduated from Harvard Law School, and by all accounts, a man who prioritized his children above everything else. He taught criminal law, wrote extensively on legal theory, and was known among his colleagues as someone who engaged deeply with his work and his students. Within moments of entering his garage, 2 shots rang out. Dan Markel was executed in his own driveway, shot twice in the head while sitting behind the wheel of his Honda Accord. The investigation that followed would expose a plot so intricate, so carefully planned, that it would take over a decade to bring everyone involved to justice. This wasn't a random act of violence. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was a targeted elimination. But this story isn't just about Dan Markel's death. It's about Donna Adelson, the woman prosecutors would eventually call the mastermind behind it all, the puppet master pulling strings from hundreds of miles away in South Florida. Donna wasn't a gang member. She wasn't a career offender. She wasn't someone with a criminal history or a violent past. She was a 73-year-old grandmother, a bookkeeper at her family's dental practice in the affluent community of Tamarack, Florida, and by all outward appearances, a devoted mother and wife. She wore pearls. She attended family gatherings. She lived in a luxury condominium. But beneath that facade lay something far darker. A woman who believed she was entitled to control her family's destiny, no matter the cost. A woman who saw other people not as individuals with their own rights and autonomy, but as obstacles or tools to be managed. To understand why Dan Markel was targeted, we need to go back to the divorce and the battle that consumed the Adelson family. Dan was married to Wendy Adelson, Donna's daughter. They met in law school, fell in love, and built what appeared to be a successful life together. They had 2 young boys, both under the age of 5 at the time of Dan's death. But the marriage crumbled under the weight of fundamental incompatibilities and conflicting visions for their future. By July 2013, the divorce was finalized, and the bitterness that accompanied it was palpable. Winnie wanted to move back to South Florida with the children to be closer to her family, specifically closer to her mother, Donna, and her father, Harvey, and her brother, Charlie. The Adelsons were a tight-knit clan, the kind of family where everyone's lives revolved around the matriarch. But Dan refused to allow the relocation. He had built a life in Tallahassee. He was a tenured professor with a reputation in the legal community. He had friends, colleagues, and a support system. And most importantly, he wanted to be an active, present father to his sons. He wasn't going to let them be taken hundreds of miles away, where he'd be reduced to a weekend visitor. The court agreed with him. In a custody ruling that infuriated the Adelsons, a judge determined that Wendy could not relocate the children. They would remain in Tallahassee. If she wanted to be close to them, she would have to stay there too. For Dan, this was about protecting his relationship with his boys. For Wendy, it was a prison sentence, keeping her away from her family. And for Donna Adelson, this wasn't just an inconvenience. It was unacceptable. It was an affront to everything she believed about how her family should operate. Donna had built her identity around being the center of her family. Her children, her grandchildren, they were supposed to be close. They were supposed to be under her influence within her sphere of control. And now, this man, this former son-in-law who she'd never fully accepted, was standing in the way of her vision for her family's future. Emails between Donna and Wendy, later revealed in court, showed the depth of Donna's obsession with Dan and the custody situation. She didn't just dislike him. She despised him. She suggested outrageous tactics to make Dan angry, to provoke him into making mistakes that might give Wendy ammunition in court. In one particularly disturbing email, Donna suggested dressing the children in Nazi uniforms to anger Dan, knowing he was Jewish and took his faith seriously. The Adelsons themselves were Jewish, but Donna viewed Dan as a religious zealot, someone whose principles she could weaponize against him. She called him names in private correspondence. She resented every decision he made regarding the children. And according to prosecutors, that resentment, that burning need to remove the obstacle between her and her grandchildren, turned into something far more dangerous than just family drama. It turned into a plot. Dan Markel had even petitioned the court to limit Donna's unsupervised visits with his sons. He'd seen enough. He'd witnessed her manipulation, her attempts to poison the children's minds against him, her inability to respect boundaries. He wanted legal protection. A hearing was scheduled to address his concerns. But before that hearing could take place, before the court could rule on whether Donna should be kept away from those boys, Dan Markel was dead. On July 18th, 2014, Dan Markel was shot twice in the head while sitting in his car in his own garage. The brutality of it was shocking. The precision of it was chilling. The hitmen who carried out the execution, Sigfrido Garcia and Luis Rivera, had driven from Miami to Tallahassee specifically for this job. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was work. Paid work. They tracked him. They studied his movements. They waited for the right moment. And when Dan pulled into his garage that Friday afternoon, completely unaware of what was about to happen, they struck. 2 bullets. One to ensure he was incapacitated. One to ensure he was dead. Then they fled, disappearing back into the anonymity of South Florida. The plot wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't the result of a sudden burst of rage or a heat-of-the-moment decision. It was methodical. Surveillance footage, cell phone records, and toll data would later show the killer's movements with disturbing clarity. They rented a silver Toyota Prius in Miami-Dade before the attack. They drove north on Interstate 75, their phones pinging off cell towers the entire way. They stayed in Tallahassee for days, watching Dan's routine, learning his patterns, waiting for the perfect opportunity. And when they finally struck, when they executed a respected law professor in broad daylight in his own home, they disappeared back to South Florida as if nothing had happened. For nearly 2 years, the investigation went cold. The Adelson family went about their lives. Wendy remained in Tallahassee with the children. Donna and Harvey stayed in their luxury condo. Charlie continued his dental practice, driving his Ferrari with the vanity plate that read Maestro. They believed they'd gotten away with it. But law enforcement never stopped digging. Detectives in Tallahassee worked with the FBI, following every lead, analyzing every piece of evidence, building a case brick by brick. And in 2016, they made a move that would change everything. What you're about to see is the moment the FBI turned the investigation on its head, a bold, calculated operation designed to make the Adelsons reveal their hand. This is the bump.
Black shorts. What is it?
Excuse me, Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. You're scared. No, don't be scared. Listen, I just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Luca for quite some time after your problem up north had been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through, the way you're taking care of Katie and Tuzo. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
Pause it, please. Does the defendant remain under surveillance for some time after this?
She does.
Okay, we see her take the paper from the undercover and fold it and put it into her purse. Does she ever take it out and look at it before she gets back into her building?
Not that we ever saw, no.
Okay. And does she make any phone calls once she goes back into her building?
When she goes back into her building, she does.
And who is the first person that the defendant calls after the bump?
Charlie Adelson.
Right, is that call A?
It is.
Okay, publish call A, please.
Hey, hon. Tonight after work or some other time in the very near future, I need to speak with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Did someone write a letter to you or something?
I've got some paperwork hand delivered to me.
You're being sued?
No, that's what I thought it was, but I'm going to talk to you.
Okay.
Okay, so, I'm going to I hope to figure out something. Depends how late you'll be, wherever you are.
Well, I'm in Mitch Klein's office on Park Boulevard.
Okay.
So I'm right now in Skyline Chili, and I'll be at his office in the afternoon.
Okay. So the boys who finished their piano lesson around 4-ish, and I've got the traffic over there, and they take a ride with them up there.
Does Dad know about this?
The dad at work today, fortunately.
What's, I can't, is it IRS?
You know, those IRS people, they're kind of foggy sometimes, but, fortunately not known.
Okay.
So I will talk to you. I'll give you a heads up if I'm going to drive up that way. Okay? And,
is Wendy down there? Is it involved Wendy?
No. So let me just talk to you later, and
what is it? Is there health okay?
Yeah.
Does it involve me or other people?
Well, probably both of us.
What's that?
Probably the two of us. So you probably have a general idea what I'm talking about. So let's just find some time to talk to each other and take the boys for a ride, okay?
You're going to take the boys up there?
No, I think I can come home. Maybe I can get here till about 7 when Dad gets here.
So this morning if you talk to me today?
Tomorrow, and it's important.
All right.
What's it
Well, I'll be up at Mitch Klein's office. You want to come up? Oh yeah, so really.
I'm just concerned that I just have to get up there and get back in time for Lindsay to get them. Sometimes she gets out a little earlier, but not kind of not here.
Can I ask you a question? Whose paperwork sent from?
I see that, that's great. It was something that came hand to hand for me. I exited the building today.
Was it anonymous or?
No, oh no, it's not anonymous. It's not anonymous. I just don't want to discuss it on the phone.
Right, whatever it is. It's silly, but if you want,
I wouldn't bother you, trust me.
yeah. Do you want me to come down to see you tomorrow? I have to have the day off.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Dad actually works later tomorrow. You know, he goes in at 1 o'clock. We both work out at the gym from 9:30 to 10:30. So
Whatever it is, I'll take a look at the paperwork.
Yeah.
I hope it's not the IRS, but
I just would like you to review it and give me some input as to what your thoughts are. Okay? So come down tomorrow. Dad leaves at 12, so anytime after 12 would be good.
12 tomorrow.
Yeah, he leaves at 12. He starts at 1 there, so 12, 12:15.
I'll come down after that. I think I got to leave and see you.
That would be great.
Perfect. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Let you come by.
Would you describe the defendant's demeanor on this call as really calm?
Yes,
She says Dad's at work, fortunately.
she does.
Does she indicate that she's in fear on the call?
No, she does not.
She was handed a piece of paper that had an article about the murder of Dan Markel, right?
Correct.
That's what the interaction was about.
That's correct. That's what he handed her and made reference to it.
And when Charlie asked the defendant what it's about, what does she say?
She says to both of us,
Probably both of us. Probably the two of us.
and then the two of us. Said it twice.
Does she say the name Dan Markel on this call?
No, she does not.
Does she say the name Dan Markel anywhere on this wire?
No, not that I recall.
Did she report this incident to the police?
No, she did not.
April 2016, nearly 2 years after Dan Markel's death. The investigation had stalled. The Adelsons had stopped talking about the case, at least in ways law enforcement could hear. The wiretaps were quiet. The suspects were careful. So the FBI devised a plan to shake things up, to throw what one agent would later call a smoke grenade, and see who came running out. The operation was called The Bump, and it was brilliant in its simplicity. Donna Adelson was outside her Miami condominium, The Continuum, a luxury high-rise in South Beach. It was a routine day. She was going about her business when a man approached her. He wasn't a neighbor. He wasn't someone she recognized. He was an undercover FBI agent named Oscar Jimenez, posing as a Latin Kings gang member. He handed her a flyer. On it was a newspaper article about Dan Markel's death, a phone number, and a dollar amount written in pen, $5,000. The message was clear. Someone from the inside, someone connected to the killing, was demanding payment. Someone who knew what happened. Someone who could talk if they weren't taken care of. The goal of the operation, as Agent Jimenez would later testify, was to tickle the wire, to provoke a reaction, to get the suspects talking again. And it worked beyond anyone's expectations. Donna didn't call the police. She didn't throw the flyer away and dismiss it as nonsense. She didn't react the way an innocent person might. Instead, she immediately called her son, Charlie Adelson. The conversation that followed, captured on FBI wiretaps, was tense, coded, but unmistakable to investigators who knew what they were listening for. Donna told Charlie she'd been handed some paperwork and that they needed to talk in person. Charlie, immediately understanding the gravity of the situation, asked if it involved him or other people. Donna replied, "Probably the two of us." So you probably have a general idea what I'm talking about. Think about that for a moment. The undercover agent never mentioned Charlie's name. He never said anything about the Adelson family specifically. He simply handed Donna a flyer about Dan Markel's death with a dollar amount on it. And yet, Donna immediately knew who to call. She immediately knew this involved her son. She immediately knew they needed to discuss it in private. They arranged to meet the next day. Charlie called his mother back shortly after their initial conversation. Donna told him he should bring cash to the meeting. He asked if someone was blackmailing her. "Well, that is always a good possibility," she said. The casualness of that response is staggering. This wasn't shock. This wasn't confusion. This was a woman who understood exactly what was happening and knew how to respond. Charlie then called Catherine Magbanua, his ex-girlfriend, and the woman prosecutors say was the crucial link connecting the Adelsons to the hired killers. He told her about the bump and asked her to meet the next day. The web of connections was lighting up exactly as the FBI had hoped. The next day, Charlie and Catherine met at the Dolce Vita restaurant in Miami. The FBI recorded every word. The audio quality wasn't great. They were in a noisy restaurant, but the conversation was later enhanced, and what emerged was damning. Charlie was paranoid, clearly rattled by the bump. He talked about smoke grenades and getting cockroaches to run out. He said if the FBI had evidence, they would have already been arrested. But he also said something chilling. "If we go to the police, this is going to put a spotlight on the investigation. You're going to have a 20-year vet with the FBI knocking at your door." These weren't the words of innocent people caught off guard by a bizarre blackmail attempt. These were the words of conspirators trying to navigate a threat, trying to stay ahead of an investigation they knew was circling them. The bump did exactly what it was designed to do. It revealed the connections. It showed law enforcement who knew what. And it demonstrated consciousness of guilt in a way that no amount of circumstantial evidence could match. The judge didn't mince words when describing what the evidence revealed about Donna's role. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was calculated. This was planned. This required foresight and coordination.
Please rise. Level of planning and coordination to bring the murder of Professor Markel to fruition was significant in this case. These were not crimes of chance or opportunity, and these crimes also required you to conspire with your son and others. You certainly can choose to deny your involvement and maintain innocence. The court finds the evidence in this case is clear. You will be sentenced accordingly this afternoon. The jury has found you guilty on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and solicitation to commit first-degree murder, and the court previously adjudicated you guilty as to these same charges on September 4th of this year. On count one of the indictment for first-degree murder, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole or release pursuant to sections 782.04 and 775.082 sub 1 sub A Florida statutes. On count two of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, you are hereby sentenced to 30 years in Department of Corrections that will run consecutive to count one. The court will also sentence you to 30 years in Department of Corrections on count three. Counts 2 and 3 are to run concurrently.
The bump wasn't just a psychological test. It was the spark that allowed investigators to see the full scope of the conspiracy. The FBI monitored the Adelsons' phones for months after the operation. They intercepted thousands of calls. They listened to coded conversations, to anxious exchanges, to discussions that seemed innocuous on the surface, but revealed everything when analyzed in context. And what they heard painted a damning picture of Donna Adelson's role. Donna wasn't just aware of the plot. She wasn't just passively supporting her son. She was funding it. She was facilitating it. She was at the center of it all. Prosecutors revealed during her trial that Donna Adelson signed 44 checks to Catherine Magbanua, the go-between who connected the Adelsons to the killers. These weren't small amounts. These checks were drawn from the Adelson Institute, the family's dental practice where Donna worked as the office manager and bookkeeper. The payments were disguised as legitimate business expenses, but prosecutors argued they were the mechanism by which money flowed from the Adelsons to the people who carried out the killing. Catherine Magbanua was dating Charlie Adelson at the time of the murder. She was also the mother of Sigfrido Garcia's children, Garcia being the man who actually pulled the trigger. Magbanua was the perfect conduit. She had connections to both the Adelsons and the killers. And according to prosecutors, she was paid handsomely for facilitating the hit. But there was more. Investigators found something even more chilling in Donna's daily planner. A small detail that prosecutors said demonstrated her direct involvement in the planning stages. Written in her handwriting were the make, model, and license plate number of Dan Markel's car. Why would Donna Adelson, a grandmother living in South Florida, have Dan Markel's car information written in her personal planner? Prosecutors argue the answer was obvious, that information was given to the hitmen to ensure they targeted the right person. And then there was the timing. On the day Dan Markel was killed, July 18th, 2014, Donna Adelson made a trip to her son Charlie's house in Fort Lauderdale. She dropped off a significant amount of cash. The prosecution's theory was straightforward. Donna was delivering the payment for the hit, and Charlie was passing it along to Magbanua, who would then ensure the killers received their money. None of this was direct evidence in the traditional sense. There was no recording of Donna saying, "Go kill Dan Markel." There was no written contract for murder. But as prosecutor Georgia Kappelman would argue in her closing statements, criminal conspiracies rarely leave smoking guns. Instead, they leave trails, financial trails, communication trails, behavioral trails. And when you put all of those trails together, they led directly to Donna Adelson. The investigation moved methodically, building from the bottom up. Luis Rivera, the getaway driver and a known member of the Latin Kings gang, was the first to crack. Facing serious charges and the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison, Rivera took a plea deal in 2016. He agreed to cooperate with prosecutors and testify against the others involved. He received a 19-year sentence in exchange for his cooperation, and his testimony provided crucial details about how the murder was planned and executed. Rivera's cooperation helped convict Sigfrido Garcia, the triggerman. Garcia went to trial and was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Garcia maintained his innocence throughout, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Cell phone data placing him in Tallahassee at the time of the murder, toll records showing his movements, and testimony from Rivera describing Garcia's role in the killing. Catherine Magbanua was next. Her trial was more complicated because her role was less direct. She didn't pull the trigger. She didn't drive the getaway car. But prosecutors argued she was the essential link, the person who connected the Adelsons' money and motive to the killer's willingness and ability to carry out the hit. Her first trial ended in a mistrial. But in 2022, she was retried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. Initially, Magbanua maintained her innocence and denied any involvement. But after her conviction, facing the reality of spending the rest of her life behind bars, she eventually agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. She became a state witness against the Adelsons, providing testimony that would prove crucial in their trials. In November 2023, Charlie Adelson went to trial. Unlike his mother would later choose to do, Charlie took the stand in his own defense. His strategy was bold. He admitted he'd given money to Catherine Magbanua after Dan Markel's death, but he claimed it wasn't payment for a murder. Instead, Charlie testified that he believed he was being extorted. He said Magbanua told him that the people who killed Dan Markel were now demanding money from him, and if he didn't pay, he would be next. He said he gave her $138,000 out of fear for his own life, and when he couldn't come up with more, he arranged to pay in monthly installments. It was a creative defense, but the jury didn't buy it. The evidence showed that Charlie wasn't acting like an extortion victim. He was acting like a co-conspirator trying to manage a situation. The wiretaps from after the bump showed him trying to figure out if law enforcement was onto them, not trying to report crime. After just 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Charlie Adelson guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then, just days after Charlie's conviction, something extraordinary happened. On November 13th, 2023, Donna Adelson was arrested at Miami International Airport. She and her husband Harvey were checking in for a flight, a one-way flight to Vietnam, a country that has no extradition treaty with the United States. Her lawyer would later claim she wasn't fleeing. He said she was distraught over her son's conviction, that she needed to get away, that it was just unfortunate timing. But prosecutors saw it differently. Donna knew the walls were closing in. Her son had been convicted. Catherine Magbanua was cooperating. The investigation was now focused squarely on her. And she made a choice. Run? The fact that she'd booked a one-way ticket to a non-extradition country spoke volumes about her state of mind and her understanding of what was coming next. Throughout the legal proceedings, even as the evidence mounted, even as her family members fell one by one, Donna maintained one consistent message. She was innocent. She was being persecuted. She was the victim.
What happened to Danny is unforgivable. But I am an innocent woman convicted of this terrible crime without evidence. Danny was a brilliant legal scholar. He would have been appalled at the total lack of justice that went on during my trial. He would have been embarrassed to have his name associated with any of it. There are two crimes here. The first was Danny being viciously murdered. The second one is taking my life, the life of an innocent woman. Convicting me should not be retribution for Danny's death. That is not justice for Dan. I've always respected the law. I've never gotten a parking ticket, but I'm going to prison for a murder I did not commit. I do intend to file an appeal so that hopefully I have the opportunity to be given a fair trial outside of Tallahassee. 11 years ago, Danny was murdered and taken from all of us who loved him. For the past 9.5 years, the state has broadcast to the world, including Danny's parents and sister, that I hired hitmen to kill him. Never in a million years would I have wanted Danny to be harmed or killed, nor could I ever do something that would leave these two small boys to grow up without him. I love these boys more than life itself. This is a lifetime of loss for these children. They didn't deserve this. His family didn't deserve this. Danny didn't deserve this. And so, as I appear before you today, Your Honor, I promise you with my whole heart, I swear to you on my life, I was not involved in any way with Danny's murder. I was not.
Gents have any further argument to make?
Donna Adelson's trial began in August 2025. For over 2 weeks, jurors in a Tallahassee courtroom heard testimony from dozens of witnesses, reviewed hundreds of pages of phone records and financial documents, watched surveillance footage, and listened to wiretap conversations. The prosecution, led by Chief Assistant State Attorney Georgia Kappelman, who had prosecuted every other defendant in this case, presented what she called a clear narrative. Donna was the matriarch who orchestrated Dan Markel's murder because he stood between her and her grandchildren. The evidence was largely circumstantial, but it was overwhelming in its totality. Kappelman used an analogy in her closing argument that resonated with many. If you see a child with powdered sugar all over their face, you don't need to actually witness them eating the donut to know what happened. Donna Adelson was covered in powdered sugar. She had the motive, her obsession with bringing her grandchildren to South Florida. She had the means, access to money and connections through her son. She had the opportunity. Her position as the family's bookkeeper gave her the ability to move money without raising suspicions. And she demonstrated consciousness of guilt. Her reaction to the bump, her conversations with Charlie, her attempt to flee to Vietnam. The defense, led by attorneys Joshua Zellman and Jackie Fulford, argued that the state lacked direct evidence linking Donna to the plot. They pointed fingers at Charlie, suggesting he was the real mastermind and that Donna was just a mother supporting her son. They pointed at Wendy, Dan's ex-wife, suggesting she had more motive and more direct involvement than Donna. They tried to portray Donna as a meddler, not a murderer, a grandmother who interfered too much in family matters but would never actually orchestrate a killing. But the defense faced an uphill battle. The wiretaps were damning. The financial records were clear. And Donna's behavior after the bump showed someone who knew exactly what was happening and was trying to manage the fallout. One of the most anticipated moments of the trial was whether Donna would take the stand in her own defense. Her son had testified in his trial, and many expected Donna to do the same. For days, she agonized over the decision. She consulted with her attorneys. She weighed the risks of cross-examination against the benefit of telling her story directly to the jury. The decision became even more complicated when Donna clashed with the judge over the proceedings. Her frustration with the process was evident, and her attempts to assert control in the courtroom backfired.
Wanted was a level playing field, but the court wanted the trial here in the hotbed of Tallahassee. I sat through 3 days of jury selection. 180 potential jurors were asked if they had developed an opinion in my case. Those that answered yes also added, "I believe she is guilty." Not one person, not one, said, "I think she may be innocent." That should have been a clue to the court to grant our motion for a change of venue, but the court denied the motion. One of my jurors admitted during jury selection that she had background information concerning what one of the state's witnesses would be testifying about. Why was she allowed to be on my jury?
What moment?
Another juror.
Mrs. Fulford.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Mr. Zellman. Again, this has nothing to do with elocution of any sort. This is a raising of grievances which are properly given to the appellate court. What does any of this have to do with sentencing?
Could I just one moment, please?
Turn that phone off or step out.
Ultimately, Donna chose not to testify. It was a strategic decision, but one that may have hurt her case. Jurors often want to hear from defendants, especially in cases where so much hinges on intent and state of mind. By remaining silent, Donna left the prosecution's narrative unchallenged by her own voice. On September 4th, 2025, after listening to closing arguments from both sides, the jury began deliberating. They took just over 3 hours, the same amount of time Charlie Adelson's jury had taken to reach their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, the verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. When the judge announced the verdict, Donna's carefully maintained composure shattered. She gasped audibly. She exclaimed, "Oh my God!" She began shaking and crying at the defense table. The judge immediately removed the jury from the courtroom and gave Donna a 2-minute break to collect herself. When they returned, he warned her sternly, "While this was not the outcome I'm sure that you desire, there will not be any further outbursts in front of the jury." As she awaited sentencing, Donna began portraying herself as a victim, not of her own actions, but of the system she believed had wronged her. She made claims about her treatment in custody, painting herself as someone being persecuted.
Okay. And then she named a package that she wanted, and she's out. She was gone. She just that fast. That fast.
Okay. How bad would you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad would you rate the pain at the time that she did that to you?
Oh my God, it was a 10.
Okay.
I didn't know my arm could, I didn't know how my arm could reach that far back.
Okay. And what did you do after she did that to you?
So, kind of stood there for a minute, and then I just thought, okay, I'm gonna go back to my bunk. And I went back to my bunk, I got under the covers, and I cried. I just stayed under my covers. I didn't come out.
Okay. Where were you at, first of all, when that took place?
In October. So I was in the bathroom. It's 10:30 at night. I went in to brush my teeth. There are three sink stations in the bathroom. Each one has 4 sinks.
and I was at the center station with my back to the door, and I'm a righty, so I was holding right hand, and I was balancing myself with my left hand on the sink, just brushing my teeth. That's all I was doing.
And what happened?
And my left hand away from the sink, and twisted my arm and like jerked it behind my back, like with my neck.
Okay.
And
did it hurt?
Yeah, it hurt.
Okay. What happened?
It hurt. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she's in the same breath that she did that with my arm, she said, "You're going to buy me commissary." I said, "I'm going to what?" And she said, "Those pretty white teeth knocked out of your mouth, you're going to buy me commissary." 9 or 10, somewhere in the morning.
Okay, and when she told you that she didn't have any sick call forms for you to request a Band-Aid and you would need to get it from the night nurse, approximately what time does the night nurse come?
So the night nurse comes anywhere from 11:30 to 2:30 in the morning.
11:30 p.m. to what time?
2:30 a.m.
To 2:30 a.m.
Right.
And in the meantime, you were supposed to use the feminine pads?
I called my husband. He told me to elevate my arm, to wash it.
The sentencing hearing took place on October 13th, 2025. The courtroom was packed with spectators, journalists, and law enforcement personnel who had worked on the case for over a decade. Dan Markel's family, his parents Phil and Ruth, and his brother Shelley, joined the proceedings via Zoom from their home in Canada, unable to make the trip, but determined to be present for this moment of accountability. Donna's husband, Harvey Adelson, sat in the front row of the courtroom, visibly distressed, watching the woman he'd been married to for decades face the consequences of her actions. Before the judge imposed his sentence, he allowed several people to speak. Friends of Donna's had written letters to the court, describing her as kind-hearted, generous, and incapable of violence. One friend wrote that they would always believe Donna was innocent, that she was incapable of threatening or harming anyone. These letters painted a picture of a woman who was beloved in her community, who had been a good friend and neighbor for years. Harvey Adelson didn't hold back when given the chance to speak. He stood before the judge and delivered an impassioned, emotional defense of his wife, accusing everyone involved in her prosecution and conviction of bias and corruption.
Thank you, Judge, and respected officers of the court for allowing me to speak. I have been Donna Adelson's husband for over 50 years. My wife sacrificed everything so that she could pour her heart and soul into our children, our grandchildren, and our marriage. This summer was our 54th wedding anniversary, and I had to spend it without her, hand in mine. She has done nothing wrong, and yet is being punished for a crime that she did not commit. I thought we lived in a different kind of world, but I guess I was wrong. I have listened, watched, and sat in the courtroom for the entire trial, and I could not help but scream in my mind by the witnesses that were brought forward by the prosecution who told outright lies. I didn't know that you could lie in a courtroom, but apparently you can. Danny's parents contend that they have never seen their grandchild. But for years they say they've never seen her. But Wendy has shared with me pictures and videos and letters from their visits. They have suffered immensely at the loss of their son, but they also contend to tell lies to the court about our grandchildren. Donna has always been a loving and caring wife and is innocent of the charges. A biased judge and jury were influenced by years of one-sided news pieces and social media.
Dr. Ms. Fulford, this has nothing to do with the character of the defendant or relates to sentencing.
May I just one moment, please?
Go ahead.
All right, thank you for letting me continue. Donna did not participate in the heinous acts that she was convicted of doing. You are sending an innocent woman to prison. You have taken my wife, and you have taken my life as well. And for what? This is not justice. It is vengeance, and it is wrong.
You have an examination for Dr. Adelson.
No, Your Honor. No, Judge.
Any other witness statements that you wish?
Harvey told the judge that Donna had done nothing wrong, that she was being punished for a crime she didn't commit. He said he'd sat through the entire trial and watched as witnesses told outright lies on the stand. He said he couldn't believe people were allowed to lie in court. He accused the judge and jury of being influenced by years of media coverage about the case, suggesting that Donna never had a fair chance. He ended his statement with a painful declaration. You're sending an innocent person to prison. You have taken my wife and my life as well. And for what? This is not justice. This is vengeance, and it is wrong. Judge Stephen Everett listened patiently, but was unmoved. He told Harvey that his statements had nothing to do with Donna's character and everything to do with his refusal to accept the verdict. Then it was Donna's turn to speak. For the first time in the entire case, Donna Adelson addressed the court directly. What she said revealed everything about how she saw herself and how little she understood the gravity of what she'd done.
She can remain at council table.
Thank you. I'm going to move the microphone. Let me speak loudly because this is not amplified.
Okay. Is this loud enough, Judge?
I can hear you.
Thank you for letting me speak. My son-in-law, Dan Markel, was a fine and decent man. He was well educated and passionate about his career. He was a good son-in-law, but more importantly, he was a caring and loving father. On July 18th, 2014, his car was followed, leaving his home. It should have been just like any other day, an ordinary day in the life of Ben and Lincoln's father, but it wasn't. He didn't know when he left his boys off at daycare that would be the last time he would see them, and the last time they would see him. He didn't know when he went to the gym afterwards that would be the last time he would exercise. And he didn't know when he drove home that his life would end within minutes. Danny wasn't just being followed, he was being hunted. He was brutally murdered in broad daylight, sitting in his car, in his garage, by vicious killers. I cannot imagine the terror he felt when he saw a gun pointed at him through the window of his car. I cannot conceive of his heroic efforts to stay alive during the hours after the attack. Danny died in the early morning hours of July 19th. His death is a loss to his children, his parents, his sister, all of us in his family, his friends, his colleagues in the legal community, and to his students at FSU Law School. Danny's boys each have a photo of themselves with their Abba, their dad, beside their beds. They grew up kissing the framed photo and saying, "Good night, Abba, I love you." The pictures and memories are all they have because cruel, cold-hearted people took him from all of us who loved him. My heart was broken when Danny died. My grandsons were going to grow up without the father who loved them. I wondered, how could we help these boys through this trauma? It was then that my husband and I knew that the best way to honor Danny's memory would be to share with these children an abundance of love, the love that Danny would have given them if he were alive. It is interesting how the state can't make up its mind about who is what they call the, quote, mastermind behind this murder. In both of Catherine Magbanow's trials, the state claimed she was the mastermind behind Danny's murder. In my son Charlie Adelson's trial, they claimed he was the mastermind. And now in my trial, they claimed that I, this grandma, was the mastermind behind the murder. I had no idea that other people planned to cut Danny's life short. And the people who did this are exactly where they deserve to be. But I had no knowledge that this horrible, evil act was going to take place. If I had become aware of this plan before Danny was murdered, I would have stopped it. With not one iota of actual evidence, the state convinced the Tallahassee jury that I solicited and conspired with other people to have Danny killed. Where is the evidence prior to the murder? The evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that the state needed to prove their case? Where is the evidence before July 18th, 2014 at 10:50 in the morning?
Before you continue, Mrs. Adelson, as it relates to this statement, is the defense trying to re-argue the trial?
No, Judge, just giving Adelson an opportunity to be heard.
Mrs. Adelson, you certainly can continue. However, the court can take into consideration the utter lack of remorse that you are displaying. Please proceed if you desire to do so.
Where is the evidence before July 18th, 2014 at 10:50 a.m. that revealed that I had any involvement in this vile and horrific act? Where is the solicitation and conspiracy evidence? The state needed to show that there was evidence before the murder to convict me. The state couldn't show that because there wasn't any evidence. They were trying an innocent person. It makes you wonder if the jurors were sleeping when the state had Sergeant Corbett on the stand for hours. Their own star witness testified that my phone was never, I repeat, never at my son's house on the night of the murder. The state's theory that my husband and I dropped off money to my son was blown out of the water by their own witness. And yet, the state continued to push that story, that lie of the so-called money drop to the jury through the remainder of the trial. And the jury bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. Reasonable doubt. Many months ago, my attorneys filed a motion for a change of venue. An expert witness testified that Tallahassee had been barraged with over 9 years of negative social media, printed news, television news, and podcast publicity about my family. He explained to the court, both with evidence and demonstratives, that for me to receive a fair trial, it needed to be held in any of the researched and designated areas in the state of Florida other than Tallahassee. All I wanted was a level playing field, but the court wanted the trial here, in the hotbed of Tallahassee. I sat through 3 days of jury selection. 180 potential jurors were asked if they had developed an opinion in my case. Those that answered yes also added, I believe she is guilty. Not one person, not one, said, I think she may be innocent. That should have been a clue to the court to grant our motion for a change of venue, but the court denied the motion. One of my jurors admitted during jury selection that she had background information concerning what one of the state's witnesses would be testifying about. Why was she allowed to be on my jury?
What moment?
Another juror.
Mrs. Fulford,
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Mr. Zellman, again, this has nothing to do with elocution of any sort. This is a raising of grievances, which are properly given to the appellate court. What does any of this have to do with sentencing?
Just 1 moment, please.
Shackled and dressed in a blue jail jumpsuit, Donna stood before the judge and began speaking. Her statement started with carefully chosen words. She said Dan Markel was a fine and decent man, a good son-in-law, and a caring and loving father. She said his death was a loss to his children, his parents, his family, his friends, his colleagues in the legal community, and his students at Florida State University. She said her heart was broken when Danny died. For a brief moment, it seemed like genuine remorse. But then she pivoted. The rest of her statement revealed what she truly believed, that she was the victim of a miscarriage of justice. She questioned the evidence. She pointed out that in different trials, prosecutors had called different people the mastermind. Catherine Magbanua in her trial, Charlie Adelson in his trial, and now Donna in hers. They claimed that I, this grandma, was the mastermind behind this terrible act, she said, as if the label grandma somehow made the accusation absurd. She asked where the evidence was from before the murder. She challenged the prosecution's timeline and their theories. She told the judge, what happened to Danny is unforgivable, but I am an innocent woman convicted of this terrible crime without evidence. Then she said something that would echo through the courtroom. I've never even gotten a parking ticket, and yet I'm being sent to prison for a crime I did not commit. Judge Everett interrupted her multiple times during her statement. He told her she was showing an utter lack of remorse, and that her words suggested she saw herself as the victim rather than accepting responsibility for her role in a man's death. He said, "You certainly can choose to deny your involvement and maintain innocence. The court finds the evidence in this case is clear." He then imposed the mandatory sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole for the first-degree murder conviction, plus 30 years for conspiracy and solicitation, to be served consecutively. He also made a request, at the defense's urging, for Donna to be housed in a facility as close to Miami as possible so her husband could visit her. Donna stood calmly as the sentence was read. No more tears. No more outbursts. Just quiet defiance. She was let out of the courtroom in shackles. The matriarch who had once controlled everything, now controlled by the state. Donna Adelson is now serving her sentence at a Florida correctional facility. She has filed a notice of appeal, maintaining that her conviction was unjust and that she deserves a new trial. But legal experts say her chances of success are slim. The evidence was strong, the trial was fair, and the verdict was supported by the facts. She is the fifth person convicted in Dan Markel's death. Luis Rivera, Sigfrido Garcia, Catherine Magbanua, Charlie Adelson, and now Donna Adelson, all serving lengthy sentences for their roles in a plot that destroyed multiple families. But there's one person who has never been charged. Winnie Adelson, Dan's ex-wife and Donna's daughter. Winnie testified at her mother's trial, denying any involvement in or knowledge of the plot to kill her ex-husband. When asked directly what information she had about her mother's involvement, Wendy said, "I don't have any information." She also testified that she hasn't spoken to her mother since November 2023, around the time her brother Charlie was convicted. Prosecutors have been coy about whether Winnie might face charges. After Donna's conviction, prosecutor Georgia Kappelman was asked if this would be the last trial in the case. She didn't give a yes or no answer. Instead, she said, "Stay tuned," the same thing she'd said after Charlie's conviction and before Donna's arrest. The Markel family has been vocal in their belief that the full story hasn't been told. Dan's father, Phil Markel, gave a victim impact statement after Donna's conviction. He invoked a Jewish tradition of wishing people to live to 120 years, the age Moses was said to have lived to. But for Donna, he said, "I wish her to live to 120 alone in her jail cell. I wish that every day of her remaining days, she thinks about the harm she has caused to so many, especially those two boys she claims to have loved so much." Those boys, Dan Markel's sons, are now teenagers. They've grown up without their father. They've had to process the knowledge that members of their own family were responsible for his death. The psychological impact of this case will reverberate through generations. So what do we make of Donna Adelson? Was she a mother who loved her family too much, whose devotion crossed into dangerous territory? Or was she a manipulator who saw other people, including her former son-in-law, as obstacles to be removed when they didn't comply with her vision? The evidence paints a clear picture, and it's not a sympathetic one. Donna wasn't reacting emotionally to a crisis. She wasn't caught up in circumstances beyond her control. She was asserting authority, maintaining dominance, solving what she saw as a problem. She signed the checks that funded the murder. She had the car information that helped the killers find their target. She was at Charlie's house on the day of the killing, allegedly delivering payment. And when the FBI approached her 2 years later, she didn't call the police, she called her co-conspirators. But even now, even after conviction, even after sentencing, Donna Adelson refuses to admit what she did. She stands by her claim of innocence. She calls herself a victim of a justice system that was out to get her, influenced by media coverage and determined to blame someone for a tragedy. She sees herself not as a woman who orchestrated a murder, but as a grandmother who's being punished for caring too much about her family. And that raises a haunting question that goes to the heart of this entire case. Was Donna Adelson fighting for truth, or was she fighting to preserve the identity she built her entire life around. The identity of a matriarch who refused to lose control, who refused to accept that there were boundaries she couldn't cross and people she couldn't manipulate. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Perhaps Donna truly convinced herself that what she was doing was justified, that removing Dan Markel was the only way to reunite her family, and that the ends justified the means. Perhaps she's lived with that rationalization for so long that she genuinely believes she's innocent. Or perhaps, in the quiet moments alone in her cell, she knows exactly what she did. And perhaps her refusal to admit it isn't about believing in her innocence. It's about refusing to surrender the last shred of control she has left. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Donna Adelson case. If you found this story as gripping as I did, make sure you're subscribed to Dark Trail Files. We cover cases like this with the detail and respect they deserve, bringing you stories that go beyond the headlines and into the psychology, the evidence, and the human complexity that makes true crime so compelling. Drop a comment below and let me know. Do you think Donna truly believed she was innocent, or was she simply too proud to admit the truth? And what do you make of the fact that Winnie has never been charged? I'll see you in the next one. Stay curious. Stay vigilant. This is Dark Trail Files.